Thou didst me good service, Siraj. I've given thee courtesy enough.
Hi, this is Lamenter's Jail, and this video is like a super detailed guide on how to beat Godfrey, the second to last boss in Elden Ring. But before I got into all of the moveset and everything and what to do in every situation you might find yourself in, I did want to just share a couple of the easiest possible strategies that I've managed to find in order to beat this boss at level 1 with no weapon upgrades and with like as little brain effort or muscle memory as possible. The second strategy that I'll be showing off in a minute is mostly based on luck, so if you just try it enough times you will quickly get it to work because it's pretty easy. But it does require a little bit of pre-planning in earlier stages of the game, so you can lock yourself out of that method if you don't think about it for a little while beforehand. But this first strategy that you're seeing play out on the screen right now doesn't require any pre-planning or difficult setup whatsoever, so anyone should be able to do it. You can just skip phase 1 entirely by using the Unseen Form sorcery and the Assassin's Gambit Ashivore to make yourself invisible, and then you just enter the fog wall and immediately crouch, and then sneak up behind Godfrey, and you can just stand there indefinitely and drink flasks and cast Poison Mist over and over until phase 2 just starts. When Assassin's Gambit and Unseen Form wear off, as long as you don't stand up or move, Godfrey is never going to notice you there. So you can just watch a YouTube video or eat a sandwich or something and just wait for phase 1 to be over. And then unfortunately there's no way to skip phase 2, but the point of this video was to find a method that involved the least amount of effort possible. So despite not being able to skip phase 2, I did try to make the strategy very simple, so there is intentionally not that much to learn. Really, your goal in phase 2 is to inflict both rot and frost and throw 6 black flame fireballs at Hoarah Loux. And that sounds a little bit like a lot, but let me explain to you why it's easy. First of all, as you're seeing on the screen right now, phase 2 starts, and if you just run a little semicircle around the back of Hoarah Loux, he does the same thing as soon as phase 2 starts every single time, so this will confuse him every time, and it'll give you enough time to safely summon your spirit summons. I'm using the Skeletal Militiaman because I'm not upgrading my spirit summons at all, and I like that these guys respawn. It just gives them more opportunities to distract Hoarah Loux and allow me to inflict rot and frost, which is the goal. While they're alive, I am trying to inflict those 2 status effects, and then after he's been rotted and frosted, I don't really care if they die. They've sort of served their purpose at that point. I mean, if they do survive longer, that's great, but they probably won't survive very long into phase 2.5 because of all the shockwaves that happen. And this ground eruption thing that's happening right now is one of the 3 moves that you have to learn in phase 2, because if you don't learn how to dodge them, they can hit you even if you're just sprinting away constantly, which is what you're going to be doing for most of the time. That one I call the Earthquake move. It involves 2 shockwaves that happen in a row in phase 2.5, and that's why you have to dodge it. And this move that he's using right now is the second move that you have to learn how to dodge. It's the phase transition from phase 2.0 into phase 2.5. It also involves 2 shockwaves, which is why you have to learn how to dodge it. And there, that was a perfect example. He used the Earthquake move again. Before the phase 2.5 transition move, he didn't do 2 shockwaves, and after he did do 2 shockwaves. So you have to jump over at least the first shockwave, because you can survive 1 shockwave, but you can't survive 2, and if the first one hits you, then the second one probably is also going to hit you. There is a 4th and kind of optional move that I would recommend that you do try to learn. It's this move that he's using right now. It's the Fury Swipes, I call it. The animation takes a long time, so it's easy to recognize when it's happening while you're running away constantly. And he does stand still for a second after he does it, which gives you enough time to safely throw a black flame fireball, so you really just might as well do that since it's easy to recognize. And yeah, I didn't manage to point out the 3rd move that you have to learn how to dodge because it can still catch you while you're running away, so I'll do that right now. It's the perfect time considering the full fight example just ended. It's this crossed arm grab move that he does right here. He can do it in phase 2.0 or phase 2.5, so you just have to know what it looks like, and while you're sprinting away constantly, if he looks like he's doing this, you just have to dodge at the right time. You can throw a Black Flame Fireball or a pot directly after you dodge when he uses this move, but I would only recommend doing that if he's created a decent amount of distance in between you when he did his like lunge. If he's close to you when he finishes the move, just continue to run away because you need to make distance. And then again, just to recap and just make it easy, the other two moves that you have to learn how to dodge because they'll hit you and kill you if you don't dodge them are the phase transition move that he uses when he goes from phase 2.0 into phase 2.5, and it looks like this, and you have to dodge at least the first shockwave, and then you can throw a Black Flame Fireball at him after you jump over the second shockwave. After he uses this move, any stomp that he does from this point forward is going to have an arena-wide shockwave that you have to jump over. These shockwaves have really forgiving hurt boxes. You can jump what feels like sort of early or late. It's very forgiving, the jump timing. So whenever you see him doing some kind of stomp in the distance while you're running away, just try to jump, and if you don't, I mean, if you get hit by one shockwave, it's not a big deal. You can just heal yourself and continue to run away. And the only other move that you have to dodge, because it involves two shockwaves, is the Earthquake. Again, it's this move right here that you're seeing. You'll jump up in the air, and then the first shockwave will happen as soon as he lands on the ground, and then the second one will happen a short delay later. So you just have to jump twice, and then you can turn around and throw a Black Flame Fireball as soon as you're outside of the range of the ground eruption that he does. And then those are the three that you have to learn how to dodge because they'll hit you, and the fourth one that's sort of optional because you don't have to learn how to dodge it because it won't hit you if he uses it is this Fury Swipes move, and I only say that you should learn it because it's easy to recognize, and you might as well throw a Black Flame Fireball at him after he does it, just so that you can have extra opportunities to do that. And yeah, that's it for the first strategy that doesn't require very much setup. Check the description for like a list of all the items that enable that strategy and maybe a couple alternatives that you might use as well. And what you're seeing right now is an example of the second easy strategy that I said is based on luck and pre-planning when I was talking about it earlier. I just said the luck thing because it involves summoning both Nepheli Loux and Shabriri as NPC cooperators, and sometimes they survive until the end of the fight and sometimes they don't, and there's not like a ton you can do to influence that either way. And the reference to pre-planning is because you have to have completed Nepheli Loux's quest line, which is the quest that starts with helping Kenneth Haight at the beginning of the game, and you have to have done that in order to see her appear as a summonable cooperator. And same for Shabriri, you have to have hugged the three fingers at the bottom of Lanedell Sewers in order to summon him. So without having done both of those things, which do have a decent amount of effort involved in both of them, you won't be able to do this strategy, so you will need to pre-plan it a little bit as you play through the game. But again, check the description, there's going to be a guide to how to beat Moog easily, etc. There is helpful stuff there. You still do need to learn another move with this strategy on top of the ones we already talked about in the first strategy, but that's not the point of using this one over the other one. The real benefit is that Hoarah Loux will often be distracted for the entire fight if you use these cooperator summons, which would not be possible if you were just using a non-upgraded spirit summon. And if both of these summons do die at some point in the fight, which does happen, it probably won't happen until at least a little bit into phase 2, so you can just revert to the first strategy if that does happen. It'll just kind of be your backup plan. And because this method has phase 1 taking a lot less time, because you're not just sitting around waiting, you can actually attempt this method way more times than you would be able to attempt the first method, like in real time. Like you can fit more attempts into a single hour with the second method, which makes your eventual success come much quicker. And he does create the arena-wide shockwaves with some of his moves in phase 1.5, like for example the one that goes from phase 1 to phase 1.5. And this move that he's using right now also creates an arena-wide shockwave in phase 1.5, and it's actually the one that I suggested earlier. It's like the fourth move that you have to learn on top of the other three that we already learned in the last strategy. It's not really the shockwave that'll kill you, because you can survive a single shockwave and just heal yourself after, but more so you have to know it because you don't want to be inside of the area that the ground erupts in. So just sprint away from that area, just keep that in your mind, and you can learn how to jump over the shockwave if you want extra credit and more like guaranteed survivability of this move. But even if you don't jump the shockwave, you'll still survive it as long as you're not standing standing inside of the ground eruption. And then phase 2 is exactly the same as what I described when I was describing the first strategy. You still have to know how to dodge the phase transition from phase 2.0 into phase 2.5. The move that he does when he does that does create 2 shockwaves, and so you still do have to jump over at least the first one of those 2. And then the earthquake move in phase 2.5 also has 2 shockwaves, so you also have to jump over that. But those are really the only 2 that you'll have to know, because the crossed arm grab, you'll probably never see it because his attention is mostly always going to be on your summons, and you'll just be kind of standing in the background and shooting bird bolts at him and throwing like frost pots and casting the scarlet rot breath and just trying to generally inflict as many status effects on him as possible just to support your summons as they beat up on him and take all the damage themselves. You do have to beat kind of a difficult enemy in order to gain access to the merchant that sells the bird bolts, but there is an easy way to beat that enemy, and I'll include a link to an example of how to do that in the description of the video as well. And then, of course, if you have fully upgraded spirit summons, that is kind of like a middle difficulty between using the 2 NPC cooperators and using a non-upgraded spirit summon. But that's kind of all I had to say about the easy methods. The rest of the video is the moveset guide, just what to do in every situation you might find yourself in if you're fighting him the legitimate way with melee and everything. I think the best options for weapons in this fight, if you're not upgrading your weapons at all, is a curved sword or a rapier, and the mantis blade is an excellent choice if you're just trying to do like a no auxiliary damage curved sword. It does a ton of damage. I would just put the lightning slash Ash of War on it to make it do even more damage. Its charged heavy attack is pretty long range and is very quick, and I'm just a big fan of using this weapon in this fight. It just kind of feels like purpose built. But if you were using auxiliary damage such as like frost or bleed or that kind of thing, in that case my recommended weapon would be the Anspur Rapier, bleed infused with poison mist as its Ash of War. The bleed buildup will make up for the low damage on its regular attacks, and the rot and the poison are both going to be super useful because in phase 2 your punish windows are all very short, so it's hard to get a lot of attacks in, and it's just a good thing to have that reliable secondary damage always happening. It's a very consistent weapon to use. The rot and the poison are both very useful. And for positioning, in phase 1 at least, you're going to want to stay right up against Godfrey, basically as close to him as you can possibly get, and you'll always want to be circling around to the right. That position right up against his right side is sort of his weak spot. He won't be able to hit you with a lot of his attacks when you're standing there, and standing there triggers him to use a couple really predictable attacks, so if you just try to stay in that position through the entire fight, the fight in general is going to be much more predictable and therefore much easier for you. He's definitely not going to want you there, like he's going to try to reposition to get you in front of him instead of to the right side there, but you just have to continue to, like a magnet, just be attracted to that right side. And when you're strafing, don't overshoot it, like don't end up behind him instead of to the right side of him, because behind him is not the right spot. You will end up having opportunities to perform critical hits, and in those cases I would recommend going behind him and doing a backstab instead of doing a critical hit into his face. And that's just because the animation that plays when he's recovering from being backstabbed takes a longer time than the animation that plays when he is front stabbed. So it just gives you more of an opportunity to use an Ash of War that buffs your weapon, like Poison Mist or Lightning Slash or something like that. If you front stabbed him, you would not have enough time to safely do that before he starts attacking you again. And phase 1 as well as phase 2 in this fight both have 2 like halves to them. There's like phase 1.0 and 1.5, and then phase 2.0 and 2.5. And the move that you'll see him do when he's transitioning from phase 1.0 into 1.5 is this move here. It includes 1 shockwave, and you can just dodge through at the right time to avoid it. I know when the right time is because I'm just looking at his foot, and whenever his foot is about to hit the ground, that's when I know the shockwave is about to happen. And he only does use this move once during the transition from phase 1.0 into 1.5, so you'll only see it the one time, but after this point there is going to be a bunch of moves that he does that will create arena-wide shockwaves that span the entire arena that you'll have to jump over, and I'll just go over which moves create those shockwaves individually later on in this guide. You can get a couple attacks in before and after the shockwave because the animation kind of takes a long time, but by the end of the animation you're just going to want to be in the correct position on the right side of Godfrey, just so the fight continues at the right pace in phase 1.5. This move he's doing here, the axe dragging approach, is something that you'll see the very first time you enter enter the arena and try to fight him, and then you'll occasionally see it, I guess, when you're sort of at a medium distance away and he just feels compelled to use it, but it is really rare when you're actually in the fight. Especially if you're trying to hug his right side, you'll almost never see this move, but here it is anyway, just in case. The axe throw is the medium distance closer that you'll see way more commonly when he jumps up in the air and throws his axe at you. You can either wait for the axe to just go right over your head and then run backwards to do a charged heavy at him, or you can dodge backwards as the axe is about to hit you and then do your charged heavy after that. Different jumping move he has is this jumping axe slam here that he usually does the overhead axe slam, the follow-up version after, but not always. If the jumping axe slam just comes by itself, I just typically do a light attack afterwards to punish it, and then if it's followed by the overhead axe slam, you can do a charged heavy attack. What I'm referring to as the overhead axe slam is that like little circle thing he did where he dragged the axe in a small circle before he slammed it overhead onto the ground. That is an extremely common follow-up to a whole bunch of different moves that he has in his like move inventory, and so you'll see it all the time, and that is a good thing because you can either dodge to the right and then do a charged heavy attack, or you can sprint to the left and do a charged heavy attack after he misses his swing. Either way, every time you see this follow-up overhead slam, you'll get a charged heavy attack out of the situation, so it's always a good thing to see. This is what it looks like when he decides to do an overhead slam just right out of idling, and he can do the follow-up overhead slam right after that, so that's something you can watch out for. And another super common thing for the follow-up overhead slam to come after is the reposition stomp, which trying to stick to Godfrey's right side triggers him to use this move, so you will be seeing it constantly. If Godfrey repositions by strafing to the left, then he's going to do an over-shoulder axe slam and then a follow-up after that. And if he repositions by strafing to the right, then he's going to do like a dragging axe uppercut and then he's going to do a follow-up after that. The overhead follow-up swing is an extremely common follow-up that you'll see after the left strafe. And then it doesn't matter which way he strafes, you can always just react the same way. So that would be jumping over the stomp that he does and doing a jumping light attack and then dodging to the right to avoid either the over-shoulder swing or the dragging uppercut swing. That just puts you in a good position to continue to hug his right side if he doesn't do anything else after that. And I guess the last thing to know about it is in phase 1.5 it does create an arena-wide shockwave, but that doesn't really change anything about how you react to the move whatsoever. It just looks more intimidating. But your muscle memory doesn't need to adapt at all. You just continue to do a jumping light attack right over the shockwave. And you will occasionally see him use this Fisher move as a follow-up to the repositioned stomp. You'll notice he's doing it because he'll kind of wave his axe in a circle above his head before he starts, and then in phase 1.5 you have to jump when he shoves his axe further down into the ground to create the fissure because there's a shockwave when that happens, and then a second later he's going to pull his axe out of the ground, which is going to make the ground explode where the line is, where the ground is kind of disturbed. And you can either dodge through that explosion, which is what I recommend doing because it lets you stay close to him and towards his right side, which is where you want to be for most of the time, or you could back up so that you're just not standing on top of the ground that's like kind of disturbed in a line, and in that case the explosion just won't hit you and then you can approach him afterwards. You'll never see this Fisher move come out of neutral. It's always going to be a follow-up to something else, but it can be a follow-up to a whole bunch of different attacks, including some that I haven't covered yet. This next move is one you're going to see all the time if you're hugging his right side as a general rule. Standing there kind of triggers him to do this, and it's a great thing when he does because it gives you an opportunity for a charged heavy attack. You just have to wait for him to take his second swing, and then as long as you're standing on his right side, you can take that charged heavy attack safely. If you're in front of Godfrey when he uses this move instead of on his right side, you're going to have to dodge to the right twice in order to dodge the two swings. And if you're not far enough to his right side when you land from that second dodge, he's going to do a third swing, which is the most common follow-up that you'll see after that double swing, even though if you do continue to stay in front of him instead of dodge to the right side, you can see potentially a whole bunch of different follow-ups that come after this move. There's like a chain of follow-ups that could potentially happen, and they're kind of various. But as long as you continue to strafe or dodge to the right side, you'll never actually see any of those follow-ups. In phase 1, Godfrey has two different stomps he does out of neutral, the right stomp and the left stomp, depending on what foot he's using. His right stomp is really easy to dodge. All you have to do is continue to strafe to the right and it just won't hit you, and you'll be able to punish it with a couple of light attacks. But in phase 1.5, you're going to have to dodge or jump because there's an arena-wide shockwave that he creates with this stomp. But the general strategy applies here. Just dodge to the right and do a light attack and then continue to hug his right side and go from there. As long as you hug his right side, you won't see any follow-ups after that attack, but it does have follow-ups if you stay in front of him. They can look a little bit like this, but they do vary, so it's not always going to look like this. Just try to stick to his right side, and you won't have to worry about follow-ups. If he stomps with his left foot, it's going to look like this, and it'll have like an axe swing that comes afterwards. If you're already strafing when the move starts, you can continue to just strafe to the right, and that will usually dodge it. You'll have to end up behind him because he does a pretty like wide axe swing. And then when you're back there, you can do a charged heavy attack. And even if you do have to dodge to the right instead of strafe to avoid the stomp, you can still then just sprint around to the right and end up behind him for a charged heavy attack in that situation as well. But if you don't end up far enough behind him when he does the axe swing part of this move, he will have a bunch of follow-ups that can come after that. Usually his follow-ups will start with another horizontal axe swing just going in the opposite direction, and then it'll just get a little bit chaotic from there. But again, you can avoid having to deal with most of these follow-ups just by sticking to his right side, and they just won't happen. This move here, the fast handle check, is the fastest move that he has, and so for that reason it's a little bit tricky, but there's not a whole lot to it. You just have to kind of always be on guard. He might do this really at any time, and you just have to quickly react. It's mostly just when you're in front of him is when he'll do this, when you're like reapproaching him after having had some distance between you or something. He won't really do it if you're continuing to hug his right side, so if you can stay in that position, you won't see it very much, and it does have some follow-ups. But when you react to this move, just react to it the same as you would any other move. Just dodge to his right side and go from there. And then this move here, the tell, is where he kind of leans back a little bit, and then he does a handle slam and then an axe swing. You could just dodge to the right twice to avoid this and end up on his right side, but if you do that and you don't dodge far enough to the right, you will have to then dodge like a third follow-up move that comes after a tiny delay. But just dodge that one to the right as well, and like any other move, if you continue to hug the right side, it's going to cut off any follow-ups that he might be doing. And this here is the last move that we're going to cover in phase 1, the Axe Dragging Stomp, and it has a lot of the same sort of follow-ups that the last move had, but just like the last move and every other move for the entire fight, really, you just have to hug his right side and you probably will never see any of those follow-ups. And that is how you avoid this move. Either you can dodge twice to the right in order to dodge both the axe drag and the stomp, or you can strafe to the right, and if you started strafing early enough, you can then do a charged heavy attack. But in phase 1.5, the stomp part of this move does create one of those shock waves, so you do have to dodge that when it happens. So keep that in your mind. You can only strafe that stomp in phase 1.0. And that's it for the phase 1 move set. So now we're getting into phase 2, and the phase 2 positioning is extremely similar to phase 1. You pretty much just want to hug the right side of Hoarah Loux, and he is going to occasionally force you away from that right side by doing the roar that comes before his earthquake move, but whenever he does that, you're just going to dodge backwards and then immediately start sprinting forwards again as soon as that roar is over, so that you can go back to your like preferred neutral position on his right side before he starts doing other stuff. And then of course, if he does do the earthquake move, you're going to have to just run away and jump twice to dodge that. And at that point, you're going to be kind of far away from him, so you have to try to figure out how to get back onto his right side again. And I think the safest way to do that is just to continue to sprint away from him until he uses a move that you recognize, and then you just dodge that move to the right, and then instead of punishing it with an attack, you just use that time to make sure that you are in the correct position hugging his right side so that you can punish the next move. And like I said in the easy method, when phase 2 starts, you can just do a little semicircle around the back of Hoarah Loux, and that will just put you in a good position to maintain that right side position. And usually you have enough time to do a quick charged heavy attack after you do that little semicircle, or you have enough time to summon a spirit summon if you'd rather do that. And like I explained earlier in the easy method, phase 2 does have two parts, phase 2.0 and 2.5, and the move that he uses when he transitions from 2.0 into 2.5 looks like this. And usually you can get a couple of light attacks and a charged heavy attack in when he does this move, so it's a good thing to punish. And then at the end, you just want to make sure you're hugging his right side like you're supposed to be. And I know that I've covered the earthquake move a bunch of times already, like in the easy method, but because this is a moveset guide, I feel just compelled to cover it again for the sake of just like completeness, really. And this move is really important to learn, so it is good to cover it again. It does affect your positioning a lot because your goal is to stay on his right side, and whenever he does the roar that happens before the earthquake Earthquake that does force you away from his right side. Sometimes he won't do the Earthquake after the roar, and in that case you can just run back and just hug his right side again really quick and avoid having to be in an awkward position. You can just be in the correct position again quickly. But if he does do the Earthquake after the roar, you will have to run away, and you might as well just jump twice when he lands, and then again a second later just in phase 2.0 as well as 2.5. There's only going to be 2 shockwaves that happen in phase 2.5, but you might as well react the same way in both phases just so that you can build up that muscle memory and make sure that you're able to jump those shockwaves without really thinking about it. And then after this move you can throw a pot or do some sort of projectile at him to punish him, and then you'll have to figure out how to get back onto his right side. But a lot of times that's pretty easy because he'll do pretty consistently this launching grab move where he, I guess, like breaks the sound barrier or something and tries to grab you. It is an extremely easy move to dodge because, again, you just dodge to the right and then you can follow it up with like a light attack and then position yourself on his right side. It's a good opportunity to do that. But yeah, he'll use this move when you're at a medium or far distance away from him, and you'll never really see it when you're close. So the only time you'll mostly see it is after the Earthquake move. And then he has a couple other grabs that he can do in phase 2. This is the crossed arm grab. It's the one that will still catch you if you're sprinting away from him full speed. And if that's not your strategy, if your strategy is to stay on his right side and fight him with a melee weapon, then I would use this move as an opportunity to position yourself on that right side before he's done recovering from it, and I just wouldn't punish it at all. But if you're just using like the runaway strategy, you still have to dodge it, but maybe you could punish it in that case with some sort of projectile before you continue to run away. He also has this hugging grab that he'll use when you're in front of him a little bit, and it's really easy to dodge because the windup is kind of long, so you can recognize that it's about to happen pretty easily, and then you just dodge to the right and do a light attack and just keep on hugging his right side. It's a good opportunity to regain that position as well. And then the fourth grab move that he has is this underhand grab that you will see all the time even when you're strafing around to his right side, because he'll still use it when you're in that position. But it's a good thing to see because both in phase 2.0 and 2.5 you can punish this attack with a charged heavy attack, and that is a very rare thing to be able to do. Most of his phase 2 moves don't have charged heavy attack windows after them. So it's good to see this move happen. You just continue to strafe around to the right side like you were already when you saw this move start, most likely. And then when he actually performs the grab, you can do your charged heavy attack and then continue to strafe around to the right. If you are too in front of him when he does the grab, you might have to dodge it to the right, but that's okay. Just continue to strafe around to the right afterwards. But those are his grabs, and these are his swipes. And this swipe here, the double swipe, is probably his most dangerous one because it'll still catch you even if you dodge to the right a lot of the times, and that is actually the reason why using a light equipment load in this battle and having those light rolls is pretty valuable, because then you can safely dodge to the right to avoid this move just like everything else, and also dodging away from the roar that comes before the Earthquake move is easier as well because you have a little bit more time to react. But yeah, in order to dodge this move with medium roll, either you could dodge to the left, and that's kind of like the only move that you'll ever dodge to the left instead of dodge to the right for. Or you can sprint around his right side, and if you started sprinting soon enough, like immediately when the move started, then you will be able to successfully sprint around the side of him, and you'll be able to punish him at that point. And this swipe move here, where he does a vertical uppercut before his horizontal swipe, is pretty easy to avoid just by strafing around it, but you could also dodge to the right twice and just try to end up next to his right side like normal. Really, it's just important to remember that that second swipe is coming after the uppercut just so you don't get caught off guard by it. And then he's also got this other uppercut move where he walks forward before he does the uppercut, and he'll kind of only do this at a medium distance. It's one of his gap closers, but you can just react to it the same way as everything else. Just dodge forward and to the right and then do a light attack. And then this is another move that I'd already gone over the Fury swipes, but in order to dodge it in the actual battle itself, you'll just want to dodge the first swipe that he uses forward and to the right, and then continue to strafe around behind him because the move kind of like makes him walk forward a little bit, and he won't be able to turn completely around. So if you're behind him, it's going to miss you, and you'll be able to get a charged heavy attack in as he finishes the move. And then this move, the double swipe stomp, is less dangerous than the double swipe that we went over like before in the beginning of the swipes, because the second swipe that he does isn't as fast, and so it's a lot easier to kind of strafe around the side of him to avoid both of these swipes. And then in phase 2.0, you can just do a charged heavy attack after he does the second swipe, because he's going to stomp, but that's going to miss you if you're on the side of him, and that's your charged heavy attack opportunity. But in phase 2.5, he is going to create a shockwave when he does the stomp, so the best way to punish that version of the move is to continue to strafe around to the right when he does the first two swipes, and then stop strafing. Like, let go of the joystick so that you're standing still, and then immediately jump and do a jumping light attack. If you don't let go of the joystick first and you just jump, you'll jump like kind of to the side and you'll miss your light attack because you'll be facing the wrong direction, so you do have to let go of the joystick before you jump, and then you'll be able to punish it. He also has this standing stomp that he does out of neutral, and just like I described in the last move, it's kind of the same with this move. In phase 2.0, you can just continue to strafe around to the side, and after he does the stomp, it's not going to hit you, so you can do a charged heavy attack. And in phase 2.5, it will create that shockwave again, so you will again have to let go of the joystick and then do a jumping light attack in order to punish this. And this move, the Stomp Swipe, has a similar vibe as the last move. In phase 2.0, all you have to do is continue to strafe to the right, and then after he stomps, you just wait a second and you can do a charged heavy attack, which kind of happens during his swipe. And then in phase 2.5, you're going to have to jump in order to avoid the stomp because it creates one of those shockwaves. And then you can run up to him and do one or maybe two light attacks, but a charged heavy is kind of dangerous. And then he's got this move, the Jumping Stomp, which in phase 2.5 does create a shockwave. And when he uses this move, he can rotate his body around while he's in midair, so it can like catch you unexpectedly. And he basically has 0 recovery time after this move. He's pretty much just immediately back in the action trying to attack you, so you can't really punish it. I would just use this move as an opportunity to reposition yourself and just try to stay in that like beneficial location on his right side. And while you are just continually trying to stay on his right side, he will often do this dragging kick move. It comes out pretty quickly, but as long as you continue to strafe around his right side, you don't actually have to dodge it. You can just continue to strafe and it will miss you, and then you can do a light attack after he does it. But then you're just going to want to continue to just try to stick to his right side. I wouldn't do a charged heavy after this because his recovery is very quick, so you don't really have time. And then the last couple things he can do at a medium sort of distance away is the 2 jumps that he'll do, a single slam jump and a double slam jump, where he just uses one arm or both arms. And you react to them both the same way, you just dodge to the right and then punish him afterwards, but the jumping single slam has a smaller recovery window than the jumping double slam. He stays like recovering from the double slam longer, so you'll have an opportunity to get a charge heavy attack in after the double slam, but not the single slam. You'll only get a light attack in for that one. And that is it for the moveset guide. I don't really have anything else to share. If you know something about this fight that I don't, please leave it in the comments, as well as if this video helped you beat Godfrey at level 1, please let me know that too. I do read all the comments, and that is a very motivating thing to see. And if you want to see more Rune level 1, Weapon level 0, Elden Ring stuff in the future, feel free to subscribe to this channel. Thanks.
thy strength befits a crown.